I'm Wayne Chapin from Xerillion, and this video is going to be the top 11 takeaways from Microsoft Ignite 2017. So Microsoft Ignite, if you're not aware, is the tech conference that Microsoft has once a year. So I've gone to two of them so far. I went to the one in Atlanta in 2016. I was amazed. And then I went to the one a few weeks back, which was in Orlando. So if you can imagine, this is there's about 25,000 attendees, which is, it's a huge event. So a lot of times in the small, medium business IT world, we're at events where there might be 1,000, 2,000 people. It's great. When you go to a Microsoft event, whether that's Inspire, which is for partners, or whether you go to Ignite, which is for mostly internal technical people for very big companies. It's when you're with that many people, and the whole conference takes up 3 gigantic buildings. It's amazing. And there's so many people, but you're deep into a lot of technical stuff, which is really cool. So you go there and you learn all the latest stuff that Microsoft is working on. And when you go into these sessions, there are thousands of different sessions that you can choose from. You are actually, very often you are at a session where it's the product manager for a product, whether that's Windows or a certain part of Windows, or whether that's a piece of Office 365, or whether that's Microsoft Azure or Dynamics. The people actually involved with creating and building and maintaining and expanding on these products are there giving the presentations, and they'll give a presentation, and at the end of it you can just walk up and talk to them. It's amazing. So anyway, this is going to be my top 11 takeaways from that event. So for the people that particularly our customers, or people that are follow me, I wanted to put this together so you can know what's going on, because I think is a lot of internal IT people, or people who are in the role of managing IT, but IT is not really necessarily their thing, but they're doing this for the business. What they don't often get exposed to is what's really going on in the world. I don't know that a lot, well, I say that. The fact is, most internal IT people, the vast majority, 99%, their company will not have them go to an event or pay for an event like this, because it's a substantial cost. If you have, for example, the cost of just attending the event, which is about $2,200 to $2,500 just for the admission. And then you of course have the cost to get there on the plane, and then you have the hotel during the time, and then your breakfast and lunch is going to be covered, but your dinners often will be, if you go to different events and things like that, but you might be covering those. But by the time you're done with everything, you're probably going to be spending around $5,000. And that doesn't even take into account the fact that the company that sent you there, they're paying you during that week. This isn't, paid time off, right? So, if that could be, depending on what that IT person is making, that could be another all-in cost of the company, for another $2,000 to $3,000 in that particular week. Where you're out learning, and you're not really working on the network so much, or moving projects forward. So before you know it, the company is getting close to $8,000 to $10,000 as the proposition for an IT pro to be out there. But here's the thing: if you can convince your company to send you, you should. Or I would suggest for IT people out there, considering making a deal where you split the cost with them. Because at the end of the day, who really gets the value? The company's going to get the value because you're going to learn stuff, but that stuff stays with you. It's in your head. And the ability to spend a week and absorb all this information and know leading edge IT, modern IT, what it does for your capabilities in your career is incredible. So I think it's perfectly reasonable that that the employee would offer up and say, look, how about I split the cost with you? Something to think about, and especially if I could go back and talk to Wayne, who's earlier on in his career, what I would say is, back when I was really starting out and I had a starting salary, spending that kind of money would have been crazy. Even as a single guy with no kids and really no responsibilities except paying rent, spending that kind of money would have been huge. Even if I could have really narrowed it down and traveled cheaply, stayed cheaply, stuff like that. So, but if I were talking to my own kids and they were interested in IT, I would say absolutely, spend the money, figure a way to get out there, even if you had to cover the whole thing because you learned so much. Anyway, that being said, so let's go ahead and get into the first, number one, that network as a boundary is going away. So if you think about traditional IT with where we have a firewall and we have some servers, hosting Windows applications, and we're giving users, we're controlling their access onto the network. That's just going away. And any IT guy that is, or gal, or IT pro, I should say, that is working on a network, they know this, because what I see all the time now is the business apps, they're moving to the cloud. And that doesn't just have to be that they're web-based. I mean, here at Xerillion, we have a real nice way to be able to take Windows apps and then move them to the cloud in Microsoft Azure, and it's inexpensive. So companies are throwing in the towel as far as trying to host their own data center. It's too expensive. They're too reliant on very expensive IT people. And that might hurt the feelings of IT people, but that's a fact. There's I've seen it in IT in general. There's less and less people doing this, and so while all this stuff is moving to the cloud, what I'm seeing this interesting situation happen where, yeah, we don't have any hardware to maintain, but the services are up in the cloud, and now they generate so much analytical data to be reviewed and managed, and there's so many new features that are coming into it. And I'll get to that in another slide here. Somebody's got to stay on top of that stuff. Somebody has to know what's going on there. And I would say that for IT people in general, if you can make that shift, you're going to see this whole other world open to you that doesn't require you to deal with any hardware, which honestly should be something that all of us should be very excited about. That being said, companies aren't, they're throwing the towel hosting the data center. And I'm not just talking about small businesses, large businesses. One of my takeaways when I go to these, to Microsoft Ignite last year, I went to a table and I sat down, and one of the things, there was a group, they're all sitting together talking, younger group of guys. And so I sit down and find out that the company Boeing had sent like 20 people. The resources of a company like that, it amazed me. But they sent 20 people to this event. And then there was a group of IT pros who were there, who were there to move their system to Azure. So even a large company like Boeing said, look, we don't want to maintain our own data center anymore. We want to go ahead and let Microsoft handle that, and we will work with the system. I thought that was amazing. But I hear that story again and again. So it's not just small, medium-sized businesses. Most companies are like, look, do we really want to pay to maintain this data center and keep putting hardware in it and deal with the hassles of maintaining it? Let's have a company like Microsoft do that for us. So now we have this situation where our users are more remote. Users are expecting to be able to work remote and productively, and they see a company that has work from home flexibility as being more attractive. And so companies are going to have to adapt and provide that flexibility. And so how do they do that while still maintaining the security of the data and their business applications? So that's what being in the Microsoft cloud is all about. So firewalls are less relevant, domain controllers are less relevant, setting up trust between domains and connecting up MPLS networks between different sites, and setting up routers that are routing over private WAN links. That's all going away. So what we got to do as IT professionals is we have to adapt to that. And I can see Microsoft's doing it. their whole push is completely into the cloud. And while they still support their on-premise systems and they're still important to them, I can tell you as a Microsoft partner, they do not judge my performance as a partner based on any of the on-premise licensing that I do. That should tell you something. All right, moving on here. Number 2, millennials will be 50% of the global workforce by 2020. So when I saw that, I thought, well, that's a real interesting stat. It sounded a little hard to believe. So I'm a Generation Xer myself. So millennials being Generation Y. Okay, if we look in the scope of the global workforce that's out there, that'll be millennials. And so, coming to their work environments, they have certain expectations. They want to work in open office environments. They want to be able to, again, have work from home flexibility. And so with those, companies are going to have to fight for those resources and make their workplace more attractive for this workforce. So in doing that, we have to adapt and to make sure that yes, we want to be able to give employees this flexibility to be able to work mobilely and have access to stuff and be able to do a lot even on their mobile devices, not necessarily even on a laptop. But again, how are we going to do that so we keep control of the data, whether an employee is working on checking their email from a personal company email from a personal device, or whether they're checking it from a company managed computer. So this will be important. Number 3. Azure File Sync. So this is a technology item. So Azure File Sync is essentially OneDrive for your server. So this is a new technology, but what it does is in Microsoft Azure, we turn on this service and then we install an agent on a file server. And then what it does is it says, all files that have not been touched in, let's pick a number, 7 years, 10 years. Those files are going to be stored up in Azure, but they're not going to be stored locally. But the namespace is going to be there. So if you have some file which might have been, marketing plan 2005, okay, and presumably that has not been touched in a long time. When you click on your local file server, you're going to see the name of the file. It's going to show there like it's right there. But the file actually itself isn't really there, and it's actually going to be in Azure. So all the stuff you're working with recently, let's say you decide to keep all the files stored there for, everything's going to be local that's within, say 5 years old. Great. And that probably represents 99% of the stuff you're going to be working on at a company. So you'll be able to click on those files, work on those files nice and quick. But if you have to go back and grab a file from a long time ago, you can search for it. You can click on it. But if you need to, but when you go for it to get it, it's actually going to download at that point. So you might have a little bit of a wait. But the beauty of that situation is we could probably free up a ton of space on that file server, and that file server becomes just a local performance cache. And if that file server dies, all of our data is up in Azure File Sync. So what we do is we get a new server, install the Azure File Sync agent, and it starts downloading all of the namespaces. All the file names get brought in within minutes. And then what it does is starts thinking. It goes, okay, well, let's grab the files that are used most frequently first and pull those down and intelligently handle rebuilding that file server. And of course, then you could have branch offices with the same sort of synced folders replicated, just like you do with OneDrive. You can also have it set up where it isn't just replicating the same folder everywhere. You can have different folders from different branch offices all being synced up into Azure File Sync. And so, then you start to wonder, well, if we just ran like this, could I potentially extend the life of my local file server even past its warranty, or even if it goes end of life, so long as the operating system is in good shape, stuff like that? And the answer is you could. So I think for clients that have a requirement where they cannot move their files up in the cloud, and this typically is for companies that have any CAD applications, any graphics design, things like that, they always have this problem. Well, moving things in the cloud is going to be an issue for them. So we have to have something local that's going to work just fine for them. So because they'll be able to work on all those files locally, but stuff that they're not really utilized anymore, but the company is afraid to delete or afraid to archive and put it in some other space, they can just use Azure File Sync. So this is really going to be great, and it's going to take a load off of our clients that have file servers that are just filling up. But the company, it always comes up, well, we have all this junk that's sitting there from a long time ago. We know there's a lot of outdated documents on there, but either it has to be somebody who's somewhat technical or has an idea of the history of those documents to be able to delete those, and it never happens. Nobody ever does that. It would be a very tedious job, and nobody ever gets to it. So what we can do here now is say, let's just not worry about it. For a very inexpensive cost, we can use Azure File Sync. We'll synchronize the documents. You'll have access to all that stuff over there, but then we're going to free up a ton of space on your local file server. Because I didn't share that point, that once you install the agent and it starts saying, okay, here's files that, again, I'll get back to the marketing plan from 2005 that is really irrelevant, but we're not going to delete it. So what we'll do here is it'll once it's synchronized up to Azure File Sync, what it'll do is it'll remove the file local. Okay, so it'll do that. The name will show up on the server locally, but the file itself is not going to be there. And Azure File Sync is going to be removing those local files that are old, outdated, based on whatever our criteria is. But again, it's nice and safe up in Azure. Great system. All right, number 4, Microsoft Teams will add in Microsoft Phone System, the Microsoft Phone System. So Skype for Business, here at Xerillion, we use it extensively. We use it for all of our conference calling. We use it for all of our meetings. As a matter of fact, it's taken over. Like we have a very nice conference room. I'm looking over at it right now. We have multiple conference rooms here, but we have one main conference room, and we always used to get in there all the time, meet up, go in the conference, and you know what the process is like. It's the same for every business. You look at your calendar like, oh man, I got another meeting I go to, and especially if you're looking at your calendar and going, well, there's 3 or 4 of those meetings today. Not fun. So you're working on an email. You got to get in the meeting. You see people are starting to pile in for the conference in the conference room, and people are sitting around waiting, and then you try and get that email done. You can't get it done, so you're like, oh, geez. Okay, I got to stop what I'm doing, go to the meeting, and pick up my computer, take it over there. So I use OneNote all the time. And we sit down, we wait for everybody to get there, a little, light chit chat, and then we actually get down to business, and then we're done with the meeting, and then we walk back to, back to our desk, or we go to the bathroom, we get some coffee, stuff like that. There's a lot of time in those meetings that I don't. Before and after the meeting, maybe not so productive. That's chewing up a couple hours a day of your time. And you have to, once you come back from the meeting, you have to sit down and then rethink, well, okay, what was I doing? Oh yeah, that email. And then you got to get back into the process of where you're at. With Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business, we do meetings now where we don't go to the conference room. Even if we're just a few feet away from each other, all of our meetings, even our morning huddle, everybody's in the office, and then some people will be working remote. We all get on there on Skype for Business together, and we have that meeting. Everybody turns on their video, and everybody goes around. We do our morning routine, and then any meetings that happen as well. It's pretty rare that we have a walk into the conference room and sit face-to-face meetings. It's just not as productive and not as comfortable. Now, I can already imagine people here, listening to this thinking, well, geez, what about the human touch and face and, I don't think it, in the context of getting things done, it is nice to every once in a while sit and, see the person in person. But I much prefer to be at my desk talking to the person. I still see their face. We can still, work with each other, but I can work on my computer. I can bring things up. I can share things on my desktop. So, my opinion, it's a lot better. And then if you are working remotely and you're not there physically, it's no different. So we do all of that now. So when you can take the Skype for Business components of web conferencing, audio conferencing, the phone system, chat, status to show, are you in the office, out of the office, on your computer, away from your computer, are you in a meeting, are you presenting, things like that. You can take that and then move that into Teams where you now have groups, the sales group, the marketing group, all company. You then, when you're having meetings with a particular group or a team, the meeting information, the chat, all of that stays persistently in your channel inside of Teams, and it's there if you can scroll back to it. So imagine if you could take, your audio conference calls that you're working with on a particular client, and then maybe somebody couldn't join there. If they were in the client onboarding group inside of Teams, they could just go back and then watch that video because it's still there, just as if you left a chat message. If there was anything posted, like websites or a document, it all just is scrolling through there. They would just have to work their way back up, and people could comment on different things about that. So people aren't repeating stuff in emails, or we aren't sending a ton of emails back and forth that are halfway being paid attention to, and they're just kind of come and go. So for me, Teams, Skype for Business, and then using Microsoft Office 365 groups, it greatly reduces emails in your mailbox substantially. So now we're going to take Teams and we're going to be able to add in the phone system as well. And the Microsoft phone system, that's what it's called now. It is formerly the Microsoft Office 365 Cloud PBX. Microsoft phone system works fantastically. Here at Xerillion, we switched. It came out. The business version came out in March 2017. We cut over to it in May 2017, and it's been rock solid. Love it, absolutely love it. So that would be a whole other video. I have kind of more of an outdated video in YouTube right now about using Skype for Business. We've probably deployed 10 of these now, and it really works great. I'm a huge believer in it. But when the Skype for Business phone functionalities, the Microsoft phone system comes into Teams, we will be switching over that completely, because Teams is a fantastic communication hub. Okay, so full disclosure real quick, when I was putting the slide together, I went 1 through 11, and then I missed number 5. So in the original video. So rather than redo this whole thing, I'm going to go ahead and I put in a slide number 5 with something I thought should have been in there in my original top 11 list. So I'm working this in real quick in the final video. But what I wanted to bring up was, so for number 5 would be Privileged Identity Management, or PIM. And I think the concept and the functionality is awesome. So in a traditional IT environment, we typically give somebody administrative access, and then we hardly ever take it away. They just are permanently an administrator. Or if we do this in the cloud, somebody is an administrator permanently. Here's what happens in Office 365. When we want to delegate some work to somebody, we give them what we think is the right amount of permissions, and then they'll come back and they'll right away say, I can't get in, I can't do this. And then you're like, oh man. Okay, does that mean I got to give them global admin permissions? And often that is the case. So what Privileged Identity Management, or PIM, does is say somebody can be eligible to be an administrator, but they're not going to be permanently an administrator. And so if they have administrative tasks they need to do, they have to step up and turn on their administrative privileges. And so that's the way it is here at Xerillion, for example. We have people that have global admin capabilities because there's certain things they need to do. But I, as the tenant, the owner of the account, wouldn't want somebody to just have permanent access to be an administrator, because then what's going on? You have reduced visibility. So what happens now is when somebody has something they need to do, they have to go in and they have to turn on their identity management, and I can even have it set up where they could go ahead and turn on the identity management, but they would not actually be able to have it working until I approved it. So there can be an approval workflow on that, but right now I have it set up where I get an email. So all the other administrators get a notification to say that this particular user has stepped up and they've turned on their administrative privileges. And then that person, then we specify how long they have those permissions. So with privileged identity management, somebody goes in, enables their, somebody who's eligible to be an administrator goes and enable their administrative privileges, and then I get an email, and then that happened. so I'm aware. And that person then has 2 hours to do what they need. And then it reverts back, and they no longer have administrative privileges. And again, I could lock that down a little further, even if I wanted to. And it doesn't have to be global administrator. I can have an Exchange administrator, SharePoint administrator, Dynamics administrator. There's like 8 of them on there. So, but the point is, people are just not global administrators permanently in your organization anymore. And so that is a fantastic feature inside of. You get it inside of. The EMS bundle E5. All right, so that's when we usually move people over to these days anyway. So if you have more than a couple people who are administrators on the network, you really should turn this feature on. It's a fantastic feature. It's been out for about a year, and I was watching one of these sessions Ignite. I'm like, now I get it. Now I understand what this is. So we're definitely going to be rolling this out to our customers and new customers that come aboard. Fantastic feature. But number 6, Windows Autopilot is coming to HP and Lenovo in 2018. So Autopilot for a company like us that does a lot of computer deployments is really, really important and is a great technology. So this allows us to order a computer for a customer and have a provisioning package with all the settings and the software that we need for a computer. And instead of bringing it here to Xerillion or shipping it over to the customer and then we go in and set up the computer, what we can do is we can take the serial numbers from the distributor and put those into Windows Autopilot for the customer. And then when that customer opens up their computer, it's just going to ask them a few questions. What language they want to use, their keyboard settings, and a few others. And then it's going to ask them for the Wi-Fi connection. And that's it. And then once that computer gets that Wi-Fi connection, it's going to connect into the Windows Autopilot system, and it's going to see that serial number is now registered with this particular customer, and it's going to push down the provisioning package with all the settings that computer needs. So all that tedious stuff of going in there and toggling the different settings, adding it into Azure Active Directory, putting it under mobile device management with Intune, loading up Microsoft Office, all that's going to be automated. So that user it'll sit there and do its thing, but the user can work on other things. And so we don't have to physically be on site to do that. We don't even have to receive the computer here. So that technology right now is available for Surface products, and it's coming out to HP and Lenovo early next year. So we will be beginning to roll that out to clients as they are willing to adopt the technology. But these clients will have to have basically the Enterprise Mobility Suite EMS, and so they'll have to have Windows Intune, Azure Active Directory in order to be able to do this. But that being said, any package that we've been putting in for clients for maybe over the last 6 months now have all had that system anyway. So that's number 6. So number 7 is Windows 10 S. So Windows 10 S is Windows 10 Pro in S mode, and what that means is that this computer only receives its apps through the Windows Store. And so, why would you want to do that? So when we have applications that come through the Windows 10 Store, that is a direct load of the application, as opposed to another terminology, which is bypassing the Windows Store, which is typically what people do now, and quote-unquote side-loading that application into the operating system. So with Windows 10 S, by having our apps either in the public Windows Store or the private business store that we would set up for our customer, we can say these are the apps that are sanctioned by the company that can be installed on the computer. And then any app that is not sanctioned by the company and is not in the private business store is not allowed to be installed. And if you think about that for a second, it's very powerful. It actually is more powerful than having antivirus on the computer, because the operating system is set up to say nothing can be installed on this computer that isn't sanctioned by the company. Well, that means viruses can't be installed on the computer either. It just won't allow it. So, Xerillion for our clients or somebody who's installing this into their internal network would say these apps are essentially whitelisted in the company and can be installed, and they will be updated through the Windows Business Store automatically. And we know what these apps are. We have visibility. We trust these applications, and anything else, it has to be brought up to IT if somebody wants to put it in there. And that's really great. So to me, that would be the first line of security, saying, well, here's the apps you can install. Anything else, you're going to have to talk to IT to get that on here. Otherwise, you can't put it on the computer. And it's not to be restrictive. It's to keep that computer stable, and also to keep junk off your computer from running around your computer and then sending data, quote unquote, marketing data off to some company. Who knows where that data is going? It's amazing to me when we put cloud app discovery software on computers for a company that thinks we got things really tight here, we got things locked up. All right, fine. Let's go ahead and there's a utility that Microsoft has. We can go ahead and run it. We just put it on the computers. It takes just a few seconds to load, and we find out what apps are sitting on the computer and then sending data through the cloud. We can see the app name, the kind of app that it is, and then we can see how much data it's sending out. You'd be shocked. Anybody that's watching this video would be shocked to run those apps on the computer and see how many little goofy apps that have been installed by the users on that computer that are trying to sniff out and see what data they can get that potentially would compromise something inside the computer network. So with Windows 10s, we just get away from that because it says the only thing that can be installed is coming from that Windows Store, and that's it. And it doesn't have to be apps that you just get through the Windows Store. Businesses will be able to set up their private business store for sanctioned apps to run in the company, which is fantastic. So number 8, remote desktop as a service is coming. So one of the typical use cases we do here at Xerillion for computers or Windows apps that need to be moved to the cloud is we will set up a remote desktop server up in Microsoft Azure that will host those Windows apps that are not web-based apps. And so it's pretty expensive to do this, and so that represents a lot of what we do up in Azure. Well, Microsoft knows that's an important use case. One of the things that we struggle with is to say, well, if a company has 100 users, for example, running on remote desktop services, one of the best things about Azure is you can say, well, look, do you really need that server running 24/7? Yes or no? And in most places they don't. They don't need it running 24/7, but they're very nervous to have the server not running at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning when really nobody's ever going to be in there, but just in case. Especially if you're a medium-sized business with some size, you want to have the ability for people to get in. So the next thing is to say, well, in the world of Azure, it's elastic. We can say, well, during business hours, we'll have a capacity for, say, 100 users. But outside of business hours, why don't we have the capacity to run the system for 4? Saving the company a lot of money. So if you can imagine, during business hours, we might say, we're going to have 10 servers running. But outside of business hours, we might have 1 server running. And you can do that in Azure, but up until now, there's a very complicated thing to put together. There's not a great solution for that. So Microsoft knows that, and so they're coming out with a remote desktop as a service capability. So the servers, the storage, the bandwidth, all that stuff is going to be obscured. You don't control any of that. You're just going to be given a service to load up your apps and a place to store the data, and you're just going to say, during these hours, I need this much capacity, and after hours, I need this much. Or you can say, look, during business hours, when people are coming online, don't give me more power until the average CPU utilization is 50%. When we get above 50%, add 1 more server worth of power. When that increases, the average is 50% again, add 1 more server worth of power. But over time, when we get towards the end of the day and the average the average CPU utilization drops to, say, 25%. Okay, reduce 1 server. And then the average drops again, reduce another server. So you can see this would save the company a lot of money, and it reduces a lot of scripting headaches and things like that that we deal with now. So very excited about that solution, because we have quite a few companies that are stuck with an application it's supported, it's used, it's important in the company. They cannot lift this to the cloud, and we'll be able to do this for customers. So that is not out in production yet, but it's coming, and I've seen the demo. Really neat. So number 9. So in the spirit of the earlier conversation around Microsoft becoming a global telecom or getting into Teams. So number 9. So in the context of Microsoft's phone system with Teams and Skype for Business, Microsoft wants to become a global telecom. They are becoming a global telecom. So with their purchase of Skype in 2007, that was a key part of making that work, because Skype is set up all around the globe. And so now to bring in business the business phone system into it, which came into production in March, they acquired all the capability they need to move businesses inside of their phone system. So it's going to be interesting as more and more companies that are adopting Office 365, and they're adopting it at an incredible rate. It's their flagship product now. It's an easy add-on to add on the Microsoft phone system. And so businesses are going to be doing it all around the world. So Microsoft, while it is a software and services company, is also going to become a huge telecom, a global telecom provider, which is pretty neat. So number 10, Microsoft wants you to move away from passwords. So when I use my Surface right now, I actually don't often, when I come to the computer, I actually don't put a password in. A couple of different things. Either it uses a biometric, like it uses my face, which actually works really well, or I put in a PIN code, or if I wanted to, if I had a fingerprint reader, I could do that as well. But the point is that when I set my Surface Pro up and I used Windows Hello, this is essentially two-factor authentication, because what it did was it established a security key that is attached to my identity, a paired key between my up in Azure Active Directory with my user account and a private key, the other pair, part of the pair here on my Windows Surface Pro. So when it sees my face and accepts that I am who I am, it doesn't actually do anything with a password. There is no password. What it does is it goes into the TPM chip that's inside my Surface Pro and unlocks that private key, matching up with my public key up in Azure, and then I'm in. All right, so there was no password ever sent. So somebody would have to have my face and they would have to have my device in order to be able to use this system to get in. And using my face on another device is going to create a whole different public and private pair key. And that private key is, again, stored on a chip inside of the computer. It's not stored on the hard drive. So if somebody was snooping around on my hard drive, it wouldn't matter, because my password information is not there. So once you are signed in with Windows Hello, then the next thing is you can take that token that you receive, verifying your information, and then you can take that on to other cloud services. And that works pretty well. I really don't have to enter in my password all that often when I'm going to different cloud services. So, passwords in general, they're really not that secure. And it's one of the reasons that we don't do some of the lower end versions of Office 365 anymore, like Business Essentials, Business Premium, because they're just password-based protection. And we can do a lot better than that these days, especially with somebody who really knows what they're doing with the technology. So our practice is going to continue to work to have users move away from that and use things that are more secure, but that don't encumber them when they're trying to get their work done. And Windows Hello is a big part of that. So we're coming up to the last one here, number 11, and that's Microsoft Cloud Analytics. So this is really something for IT pros. When you are doing your IT work and you don't have servers anymore, there was a time I thought, well, boy, well, then what are we doing here? And boy, my opinion of that has really changed. As a matter of fact, when we put our list of things that we have to work through for a client that has a full cloud implementation of Microsoft 365, which is their whole product suite. I won't get into that video here, but it's Office 365, EMS, and Windows Enterprise combined. there is an insane amount of data that comes out of that system. Now, hopefully some of that can be captured in alerts and then turned into tickets, but somebody has to go into these individual dashboards and see what's going on. So that's great, you have all this security technology. You have the security technology through EMS, for Azure Identity Protection, you have it for Windows Defender Advanced Threat Analytics, you have the SecureScore dashboard that's inside of Office 365. You have Cloud App Security Analytics. So you have all this stuff providing a lot of data, and you can use it to do things and set controls so that somebody can't just download a truckload of data, or somebody is deleting a bunch of data. You know, when you want to have visibility in your system, it's all there, but you have to have somebody that knows what to do with those analytics. And so right now, I would say there's about 7 different dashboards that somebody that really understands what they're doing with the Office 365 technology would need to keep an eye on. You know, some of the stuff would need to be alerts, and when you're an IT company, those alerts should be creating tickets, but somebody still has to go in there and review this stuff. And also, there's new technologies that keep coming in these cloud services. So, you know, who's going to go in there and make sure they're looking at that to make sure that, hey, there's a new feature in here, you really should configure this thing. So getting a handle on cloud analytics as IT professionals is really important. And I would say that this isn't like the old days of, you know, people who are not really trained in IT go in and say, we're just gonna, you know, I'm working with Windows Server 2003 or 2008. It kind of looks like my desktop operating system. I can kind of, you know, putz my way through this. It's not the same. It's not the same. You can potentially get things running, but they won't be running right. They won't be secure, and you really have no visibility. To do this right, you're going to have to really be trained on it. And so that would be my advice here. And so it's a big push about, you know, what we do here at Xerillion. These technologies are expanding extremely fast. The fronts that Microsoft is operating on across the whole cloud platform is mind-boggling. And that's why I go to these events like Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft Inspire, is to learn what's going on. And it takes multiple times kind of hearing about the same product before the light pops on and go, oh, now I really get it. So focus on cloud analytics for all of the cloud services that are in there is going to be extremely important. And that is it. So anyway, thanks for listening to this. Hopefully you got something out of it. You know, if you have any questions for me, you can, you can ask, you can comment below, and I'll respond. You know, things that are going on Microsoft Ignite. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Also, if you most all the sessions from Microsoft Ignite are on YouTube, or you can go to the Microsoft Partner Community. Excuse me, the Microsoft Tech Community. And that is where all the techs around the world that are really into these Microsoft technologies are. And that is a great place if you're a technical person to go and start digging into that. And you can just use your Microsoft account. You don't have to be a Microsoft partner. You do not even have to have any of their licenses. But it's a good resource. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.